Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for joining us here with Family Network on Disabilities. My name is Latasha Bird. I'll be your moderator today on behalf of the Family Star Program, which stands for Support, Training, Assistance, and Resources with Family Network on Disabilities. Today, we will bring you the third in a four-part series of parenting a child with mental health needs. Today, we'll be speaking on being the best advocate for your child and your family. So we want to say welcome, thank you, and we're glad that you stopped by to take a minute and find out a little bit more information about today's topic. We at the Family Network on Disabilities are family-driven and family-centered 501c3 nonprofit for the state of Florida. We were founded in 1985 by a group of parents not unlike yourself who came together looking for mutual support and information sharing and those opportunities that come with being a grassroots organization of persons with disabilities and their families, as well as being family-centered and family-driven. And one of the things that makes FND unique is that the majority of the board members, program staff, management staff, myself included, we're all parents, family members, persons with disabilities themselves, and in some way integrally connected to the disability community. It's our learned experiences and those shared experiences that make us so relatable. Now, before we get into the webinar, we'd like to begin with telling you just the following tidbit of info. We are not doctors, we're not lawyers. None of the information that you receive today can be deemed as illegal or medical advice or even mental health advice. However, we do provide information and resources and all the support that you would need to make informed decisions. So we want to say again, thank you and welcome on behalf of all three of our regional PTIs that you see at the bottom of our screen and the Family Star Program. Welcome to the webinar. Today, we are bringing you session 3 of parenting a child with mental health needs. Today's info webinar will be about being the best advocate for your child and your family, being the best advocate for your child and family. Now, we will discuss these 5 pillars here that you see about the topic of being the best advocate you can for your child and your family. Now, number 1 through 5, enumerated as follows. Number 1, knowing what laws protect you and your family. Number 2, understanding the Mental Health Parity Act. Number 3, learning effective strategies to document your child's system involvement. Number 4, creating the story that works for you. And number 5, recognizing your role in reducing stigma. So at the beginning, you saw laws that would govern these issues. So these are the laws. You see at first, ADA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that's IDEA, the Rehabilitation Services Act, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, better known as HIPAA. Let's talk about the first one and move through the list accordingly. ADA. The ADA is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life. And that includes jobs, it includes schools, it includes transportation, and all public and private places that are open to the general public. Let's move on to IDEA. Now, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is our nation's primary special education law. Now, IDEA guides how states, school districts, and public agencies alike will provide early intervention, special education, and related services. There are 4 parts, so part A through D. Part A covers the general provisions of the law. Part B covers assistance for education of children with disabilities. Part C covers infants and toddlers with disabilities, including children from birth to age 3. And finally, Part D consists of the national support programs administered at the federal level. That brings us to number 3, the Rehabilitation Services Act. This Rehabilitation Act of 1973, as amended the Rehab Act, it prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies, in programs receiving federal financial assistance, and federal employment, and the employment practices of federal contractors as well. 504 plans are formal plans that schools develop to give kids with disabilities the support they need, and they are covered under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. This is a civil rights law. That brings us to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA. This act from 1974 is a US federal law that governs the access to educational information and records by public entities, such as potential employers, publicly funded educational institutions, and even foreign governments. Now, FERPA gives parents certain rights with respect to their children's education records. These rights will transfer to the student when he or she reaches the age of 18 or attends a school beyond the high school level. This law gives parents the rights to inspect, to correct, and also to get permission for the release of a child's records. That brings us to the final one here on this page. That's HIPAA. That's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. This is a federal law. It's required the creation of national standards to protect sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or without that patient's knowledge. There are key elements to the privacy rule, including who's covered, what information is protected, and how that protected information can be used or disclosed. Now, there are more of the laws. There are 5 more here: seclusion and restraint guidelines, the Baker Act, the Markman Act, and West Kleinert Fair Interview Act, and also the Mental Health Parity Act. Let's talk about these laws continuum. So with the seclusion and restraint guidelines, the Department of Education, or if you see the DOE, in collaboration with SAMHSA, identified 15 principles that they believe that states, local school districts, preschool, elementary, secondary schools, parents, and other stakeholders should consider when implementing seclusion and restraint in the school environment. Now, there are a couple here that we will give you a brief overview. So let's talk about prohibited restraint. That's going to be the fact that school personnel may not use a mechanical restraint or a manual or physical restraint that restricts a student's breathing. That's that prohibited restraint. Seclusion. Now let's talk about seclusion. School personnel may not close, lock, or physically block a student in a room that is unlit. It does not meet the rules of the state fire marshal for seclusion timeout rooms. Restraint rules for children's psychiatric residential treatment centers looks like this. Under the conditions of participation for psychiatric residential treatment facilities providing inpatient psychiatric services to individuals under the age of 21, under the Medicaid program, all resident children and youth now have the right to be free from restraint and seclusion as a means of coercion, as a means of discipline, convenience, or also retaliation. So specifically, restraint and seclusion may only be used to ensure the safety of the resident or others during an emergency safety situation. The restraint or the seclusion must terminate when the emergency safety situation has ended. When the emergency safety situation has ended, and the safety of both the resident and others can be ensured, notwithstanding time remaining on orders. The least restrictive emergency safety intervention likely to be effective must be used. Now let's move on to the Baker Act. So it was originally called the Florida Mental Health Act of 1971. This is a Florida statute that allows for the examination of an individual through voluntary or involuntary or emergency commitment. It can be initiated only by law enforcement officials, court judges, mental health professionals, or physicians. There must be evidence that an individual has a mental illness or that there is intent to harm oneself or others. So individuals are taken to a designated receiving facility for assessment and examination and are held for approximately 72 hours before release. Or if necessary, they can be held longer or admitted to an inpatient psychiatric facility. That brings us to the Markman Act. The Hal S. Markman Alcohol and Other Drug Services Act of 1993, commonly referred to as the Markman Act, provides for emergency assistance and temporary detention for individuals requiring substance abuse evaluation and treatment in the state of Florida. The Markman Act is initiated by first filing a petition in court where the individual resides. There must be a reason to believe or direct knowledge that the individual has lost self-control with regards to substance abuse, and there exists a possibility to inflict harm upon themselves or to others. That brings us to the West-Kleinert Fair Interview Act. Now, with this act passed in Florida in 2016, it's the first of its kind that protects persons with developmental disabilities. It has two parts. And the first part creates an identifier on the Florida's driver's license or ID card, which is the letter D. And it's going to be used to identify an individual with a developmental disability. Proof of diagnosis from a medical professional is required. Now, the second part of the act that deals with interviews of individuals with ASD by law enforcement, school police, and public safety personnel. I'll read part of it for you. So the act reads as follows. Law enforcement officers, correctional officers, or other public safety officials will make a good faith effort upon the request of a parent, guardian, or the individual to ensure that specified professionals, be it a psychiatrist, psychologist, mental health counselor, special education instructor, clinical social worker, or related professional, are present at all interviews of an individual diagnosed with autism or autism spectrum disorder or a related developmental disability. The parent, guardian, or individual bears the expense for hiring the professional. And this is with the Interview Act. Excuse me. Now, the next one has its own slide. So this is the Mental Health and Parity and Addiction Equity Act of 2008. That is a large mouthful. But what this talks about is a federal law that generally prevents group health plans and health insurance issuers that provide mental health or substance use disorder, benefits from imposing less favorable benefit limitations on those benefits than on medical or surgical benefits, either being an annual or a lifetime dollar limit. So there are three different caveats for this one. And it's that number one, health insurance claims cannot have higher copays or other out-of-pocket expenses for your behavioral health benefits than they do for other medical benefits. Now, number two, those health insurance plans cannot put higher limitations on the number of visits or days or coverage for your behavioral health care than they can do for other medical care. And then number three, health insurance plans cannot use more restrictive managed care practices for behavioral health benefits than they use for other medical benefits. So if a plan has to follow federal parity laws, then the following must be covered equally when it comes to treatment limits and payment amounts. So I'll give you a couple of those different aspects. Inpatient, in network, and out of network, and outpatient, both in network and out of network. Intensive outpatient services, partial hospitalization, residential treatment, emergency care, prescription drugs, copays, deductibles, maximum out-of-pocket limits, the geographic location, the provider reimbursement rates, and also clinical criteria that's used to approve or deny care. So as it stands, being enacted in 2008, this Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act did not require a plan to offer mental health and or substance use disorder benefits. But if the plan chose to do so, it must offer those mental health and substance use disorder benefits on par, there's the parity, with or equal to the other medical surgical benefits it covers. For example, I'll give you an example. If a plan allowed an individual to have as many appointments with an immunologist as he or she needs, but only covers, let's say, 5 appointments for a psychiatrist, this would violate the parity law. So the ACA expanded these protections with the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act of 2008. So as a result, qualified health plans, both individual and small group health plans, offered in and outside the health insurance exchanges, and the benefits offered to the Medicaid expansion population must include the same mental health and substance use disorder benefits as an essential health benefit. Thereby, they must comply with the parity law. So, with all that being said, this federal law requires that insurance coverage for mental health conditions cannot be more restrictive than what those benefits and coverage look like for other medical health benefits and conditions. So there's also help with the law. So you see here, rights law, those are for special education laws. The Kennedy Forum, those are mental health laws, and also disability rights of Florida, which handles disability laws. Let's talk about each one of those, getting help and assistance with those laws. With rights law, there's a website created, and it was created by a married couple who have had personal experience with special needs and the special needs education school system. So along with their website, they produce resources, materials, books, conferences, and provide trainings as well for parents and professionals about the most up-to-date IDEA laws and the special education system. Their website is loaded with information to support the needs of parents. Pete Wright, hence Wright's Law. Pete Wright is an attorney, and he represents children with special education needs who has had his own learning disabilities. And Pam Wright, which is his wife, is a psychotherapist who's worked with children and families since the 1970s. Now, her training and experience in clinical psychology and clinical social work gave her a unique perspective on parent-child school dynamics. And that is Wright's Law. If you see the link here that is on your screen, www.wrightslaw.com, this is a way that you find out more information about Wright's Law. Let's talk about the Kennedy Forum. So this was founded in 2013 by former Congressman Patrick J. Kennedy, Democrat from Rhode Island. The Kennedy Forum leads a national dialogue on transforming the healthcare system by uniting mental health advocates, business leaders, and government agencies around a common set of principles that includes full implementation of the federal mental health parity law. This organization provides resources, updates, and conferences around the country. If you want to know more information about the Kennedy Forum, you can reach their website at www.thekennedyforum.org. That leads us to disability rights for Florida. This was founded in 1977 as a statewide designated protection and advocacy system for individuals with disabilities in the state of Florida. Now, Disabilities Rights Florida is also a 501c3 non-for-profit corporation that has authority and responsibility under 9 federal grants. The services are free. I'll say it again. Those services are free and confidential. And the services that they provide will include information and referrals, self-advocacy support, technical assistance, also providing investigations into complaints of abuse, neglect, and rights violations, also dispute resolution support, negotiation and mediation support, and also advocacy services. To reach Disability Rights of Florida, you can visit their website at www.disabilityrightsflorida.org. So if you're thinking in terms of there's so much to document and so little time, where do I start? Well, if you're thinking of it this way, just start at the beginning. You want to review what needs to be documented and review what needs to be saved. There's different options that you could use for saving, whether you want to use digital or physical copies. Being in a hard copy for binders, a flash drive, keeping them on a Google Drive or a cloud service for your computer device or handheld device. You could also use displays with dividers and sheet protectors, all of these different types of things. How, when you figure out what it is that you might need to save, well, there are a couple of different things. You might use medication logs, medication side effect logs, information on how to contact your provider, and behavioral logs as well, even the phone call logs. School documents, that's IEPs and 504s, also physical and medical health records, even being so far as to include assessments and evaluations and even testing, those types of things, etc. And also behavioral health records with assessments and evaluations, the same, be they psychosocial and even neuropsychological, and also insurance documents or EOBs. These are all the things that you want to consider using when you start. This is a way that you can use a template to log medications. There's the name for the medication, the date you started, what dosage you have, directions for usage, and the doctor's phone number who prescribed this information for you. This is one way to be able to keep this template and have it at your ready so that you're not looking for individual receipts or information that was given to you as you walked away from the doctor's appointment. This is a great way to be able to log those things in. Some doctor's offices will also keep that information for you as you're ready as in a portal, a medical portal that you will sign up for and have access for all of your medical records through that doctor's information system as well. But these are ways that you can keep up with information at your home. Here's another log, the medication side effects logs, with the same types of information: the medication's name, the dosage, the date it started, what side effects were, if any, were experienced, and the date that you stopped. It has the child's name and date at the top. There's a phone log, the same in the same instance, the name of the contact provider, the title, the phone number, title of the contact provider, phone number, the date and time of your call, what the outcome was for that call, and if there would need to have any follow-up. This is one of the issues that I've had personally with having to keep a phone log, because at one point we had roughly 13 different primary care therapists and specialists that we spoke with. So this is a good way to keep everyone's information at a ready. And if you're not keeping it digitally and you need to have something in your hands, having a phone log works as well. So to think about, when you're becoming an advocate for your child, it is a process. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. You want to think about understanding what the diagnosis that you have, processing the information, and most of all, getting support. creating that supportive environment that will uplift you and keep you stable in those times where you just might be a little uncertain. And also being able to find the resources that you would need and giving yourself grace while you're going through the process. These are 10 ways that you can use to become an advocate.
Hi everyone, Gina McDowell here again. Today we are taking a deeper dive into mental health advocacy and talking about how you can help. So if you are interested in continuing to be that mental health advocate and create awareness, follow these 10 tips. Number 1 is stay educated. Stay up to date on current research and current trends going on with our youth, and make sure that that information is coming from reputable sources. The more we know, the more awareness that we can spread, which leads me to number 2, which is keep talking. Keep having these conversations with your children. The more we talk about it, the less stigma there is around mental health. Number 3 is spread the word. Talk to other parents, talk to teachers, talk to other partners in the community. The more we talk about it, the more awareness we can spread and the bigger impact we can have. Number 4 is encourage and model good coping skills. So these are the things that we want our children to use and our children to learn. So we want them to follow in our footsteps. If they see us doing it, chances are that they'll do it too. Number 5, be a cheerleader. It's easy sometimes to get wrapped up in what's wrong. Make sure that we're also acknowledging what's right. So if you see someone that is advocating for mental health and really creating and spreading that awareness as well, let them know that you noticed. Number 6, stand up for what you believe is right. We are our children's biggest advocates. So if you feel that there is a situation where you need to step in and really advocate for your child or someone else's child, don't be afraid to do it. Number 7, keep an open mind. So keep an open mind when it comes to other people's view of mental health as well. Remember, we have all had our own experiences, and just not everybody might share the same exact view that we have. So just know that we don't always have to agree on a certain scenario or situation in order to accomplish the same goal. Number 8 is get involved. Find a volunteer group, find a community group that interests you, take a stance on something that you believe in, or maybe you donate to a behavioral health campaign that is important to you. Number 9, know that you can't solve everything. As advocates, it's not our job to solve the world's problems. And actually, in some situations, there isn't even a problem that we can fix. So just know to be there, be present, and provide support and resources when you can. And lastly, take care of yourself. Self-care is so important. As the quote says, you can't pour from an empty cup, and it's so true. Plus, we want to be the best version of ourselves in order to help, and we want to model this to our kids that this is important, and self-care is a priority. So that's what we have for you today. Let us know in the comment section below how you plan to be a mental health advocate. We will talk to you next time. Don't forget to like us and subscribe.
So this is one of the great ways that you can take these tips to understand how to become an advocate for your child, and understanding that it doesn't happen overnight. It is definitely a process. You want to be able to tell your story as being an advocate. It can be hard. It can be very, very difficult when you're telling someone about your life, involving all of those different details that you want to add in for a story. It can be hard. It can be unexpected for the emotions that you may feel, and it cannot, always be easy for you. But if you think about why you're doing this and why you're understanding all of these different little intricacies around the diagnosis, and why you're actually telling that story to other people, you keep in mind all of those different things and what your whys look like in the back of your head, it becomes a little easier over time. You want to choose what you are going to say and when and how you'll say that, and know that at any time you always have control over how much or how little you share. You may not be a formal advocate, but more so of an educator. and bring those different types of facts rather than sharing a personal story. Either way, you're still bringing forth that advocacy piece. You might be overcome by fear of judgment or rejection because of the things that you share. But it's good to be able to find allies to help you build your confidence and be able to get that story out. Building trust, it's a process. It's a process. Just like having or becoming an advocate doesn't happen overnight. It's understandable that being able to build the trust on both ends is also a process. Remember that you have control and you set the boundaries, you set those parameters for all of the information that you will bring forth, and also the information that you will absorb. You want to incorporate positive messages at all. And if you can, connect with others who are in similar situations and get examples on things that work and also on those things that may not have worked so well. But telling the story, telling your personal story is one of the key pieces of being an advocate. Even though it can be difficult, you can think through it and understand how to bring that story into a way that the people that you are speaking with understands, and you bring forth that advocacy piece just by the details that you tell. There's an activity. Let's talk about what your elevator pitch might look like. Thinking in terms of how would you develop your child's story, this is a great activity that you might want to see. Stop the video right here. And I want to give you a couple of things that you might want to think about. And then as you do them, start the video back up and tell us how this activity worked for you. So we want to practice writing your story. A quick elevator pitch. You want to start by writing down snippets of words or phrases that you might want to include, organize them all into an outline of concepts, and then build on each one of those concepts. Now, thinking about what your rough draft looks like, it probably will be rough. That's why they call it a rough draft. And put it away. Put it away for a day or two and then go back to it. And it doesn't have to be all of those wonderful things that you can think of. You know, it doesn't have to be all rosy. Roses also have thorns. If you think about it, reality is the first four letters in reality is real. Be real. But remember, at each time you have control. You want to read it to someone that you trust, even if that person is yourself. Be able to share and get honest and constructive reviews about it. And then finally, understanding that your child's story is ever changing and it always is evolving, and your story should change and evolve to reflect those unique experiences. You want to go back and revisit the things that you have written and make sure that they're current and relevant and expectant for the things that you might want to say. So this is one thing that you might want to do now. Go ahead and think of different aspects that you may want to have incorporate into your child's story and your story, depending on who your advocacy targets, parents or children. Organize and outline the concepts and write something to build on each concept. Start now with your rough draft. Give yourself about 10 minutes. Stop the video now, and then we'll come back. Hopefully you found that activity and that mental exercise liberating for yourself. Remember, it's a first draft. It's a rough draft. It doesn't have to be perfect. Hence the name rough draft. Developing that story will change and evolve into a multifaceted coat of many colors. And it reflects what your life looks like at each stage that you will live through. And this is one of the reasons that you want to understand how to develop your story, how to expand upon those concepts and make sure that you are evolving as an advocate as your story evolves as well. Here are a couple of ways that you want to think to help you to fight mental health stigma. How can you be a change maker? Well, thinking about how you would talk openly and freely about mental health, educating yourself and being able to educate others as well. Be conscious of the language that you use and be equally encouraging. You want to be encouraged between both physical and mental illnesses and show compassion whenever possible, especially for those who have mental illness. You want to choose to empower over shame. We want to build them up rather than tear them down, and be honest. Be honest about yourself, be honest about your story, the things that you share, and also be honest about treatment options as well. You want to let people know when also they are being stigmatizing as to the words that they use, and also those words that you use within the conversation itself. And we also don't want to put so much on ourselves. Don't stigmatize yourself. These are great ideas to think of how you can be a change maker. Change starts with yourself. So give yourself as much grace as you would need to get through all of these aspects. And if at any time you would need any help or further assistance, FND is here to help. So that we want to say thank you on behalf of our 3 regional PTIs and the Family Star program today, and those other regional programs and statewide programs that encompass our family network on disability. Family, want to say thank you for joining us today. You can visit us at our website at www.fndusa.org, and also across all of our social media channels. Facebook with business and group pages in English and Spanish, as well as Instagram and Twitter. There's also the telephone number. Should you need to get in touch with us, you can do so at our 1-800 number, which is 1-800-825-5736. Again, that number is 1-800-825-5736. And with that, we want to say thank you for joining us for part 3 of this 4-part series in caring for a loved one, a child with mental illness. We want to invite you to reach out to us at the Family Network on Disabilities if at any time you would need to find further information about the topics that we speak on in our webinars. Please do not hesitate to use us as a resource. We at FND are here to help. Thank you so much. On behalf of Family Network on Disabilities and the Family Star program, my name is Latasha Bird. I have been your moderator for today, and it's been a pleasure to bring this information to you. Should you need FND at any time, please reach out. FND is here to help, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.